Welcome back to the Dads on Tap podcast. This is Scott, your host of the podcast and the founder of Dads on Tap and member of Man in the Mirror team. And I'm glad that you have joined us once again this week for our full episode. If you've not seen it, we're actually putting out a 3 to 5 minute episode at the beginning of every week called The Quick Sip, just to give you a quick thought as a dad around things I'm thinking about. But today we're going to do our full episode of between 15 and 20 minutes. And the title of our podcast episode today is What Your Kids Will Actually Remember. Last week we talked about the idea that you're doing better than you think as a dad. And I know that a lot of dads needed to hear that. We oftentimes focus on the areas that we struggle, and it's hard for us sometimes to just pause and recognize that we're growing, we're getting better, because a lot of us spend our lives focusing on where we fall short, and we need to recognize sometimes where we're doing a great job. So, Dad, you're doing a great job. You're learning, you're growing. And today, I want to take that conversation just one step further, because even though you're doing better than you think, there's still an important question that hangs in the air as we think about the question, what actually matters the most? What actually matters the most as a dad? When your kids are 25, 35, 45 years old, what will they remember about growing up with you as their dad? And with a dad now of an almost 21-year-old and a 16-year-old, man, those days are coming faster than I like to admit. But I think a lot of us invest a lot of time and energy worrying about things that our kids may barely remember, if remember at all. And sometimes we overlook the things that they will never forget. So I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about where should we be investing our time and how should we be thinking about our time? Because as dads, we have a lot of questions that we ask. Unfortunately, not enough of us get a chance to ask it in groups. And at the end of our podcast, I'm going to give you an opportunity to explore starting a really cool group that's kind of on me, and the coaching and the resources and everything is free. I'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. But we wonder privately, mostly, and sometimes maybe publicly, am I providing enough? Am I making the right decisions? Am I giving my kids what they need or what they want? And underneath all of the questions as a dad is really one big question. Here it is. Am I getting this right? Am I getting this right? Because as dads, we want to succeed. We want our kids to thrive. We want them to look back one day, even though if it's not today, we want them to look back one day and be grateful that they got to grow up in our home and have us as their dad. So what are we measuring as the measure of success when it comes to the home we're creating, the dad that we're being, and the investment we're making with our kids? And if you've ever sat around with adults, maybe it's your siblings, maybe it's friends, extended family members, and you've heard them tell stories about their childhood. It's a fascinating exercise. And very rarely do people talk about their parents' or their dad's accomplishments outside of the home. They don't usually say, my dad had a great resume of things he did, although they can certainly be proud of that. My dad worked 70 hours a week. He was a really hard worker all the time. My dad was incredibly productive in the work that he did. My dad closed a lot of deals. That's not as much what comes up as they talk about the moments they had with their dad. The small moments, going fishing, going on a camping trip, Saturday morning pancakes together, the bedtime stories, the conversations in the car, or the walks we had, or the times that we laughed together, sitting around a dinner table for a family dinner. The way that dad listened, the way that dad made them feel. It's the small moments often that leave the deepest marks. And in fact, I almost missed one of these small moments 2 nights ago. It had been a long work day. I had a lot going on. I was looking forward to the start of the NBA Finals, the San Antonio Spurs versus the New York Knicks, and I had kind of made plans to do that. And we happened to have an unseasonably cool night here in Georgia, in the Atlanta area where I live. And just before the game was about to start, about 30 minutes before, my daughter, 16-year-old daughter, says to me, "Hey, Dad, you want to sit out around the fire tonight?" We have a little back porch with a great little fire pit. And I actually, in the moment, said, "No, I think I was planning on watching the game. I'm going to watch the game." And so she said, "Okay." She walked out. And about 5 minutes later, it hit me. What am I doing? My 16-year-old daughter just asked me if I wanted to sit on the porch with her around a fire and maybe have some conversation. And so she was outside. I went out to her. I said, "Hey, you know what? Let's do that fire thing." And she said, "Well, Dad, you say you're going to watch your game." And I said, "You know what? Time with you on the back deck is more important than watching a basketball game. And so let's do that." And so I lit the fire up, and for the next hour and a half, we sat there and we had some of the richest conversation that we've had in a long time. And guys, I could have so easily missed that. You know what? My daughter probably wouldn't have said much. She wouldn't have thought much about it. But at the end of the night, I just looked at her and I said, "Hey, Sadie, thank you for this time. I just really appreciate the conversation." And she said, "Dad, thank you for sitting here with me." And those are the kind of moments that sow the seeds of a strong relationship. And they tell my daughter that she matters. And I actually told her, I said, "You matter more than a basketball game does." And scripture seems to emphasize this. One of the things I love about Jesus is that he was never in a hurry. Think about it. Jesus changed the world, regardless of what you believe about him or not. He changed the world through his 3.5 years of ministry. Yet so much of his ministry happened in the ordinary back deck moments, walking and eating and talking and listening and having conversations and being present and asking great questions. Even in the seasons when the crowds wanted more from him, Jesus often slowed down enough to move beyond the crowd and the huge impact and notice one person, have a conversation, recognize a need. And I think that's a powerful reminder for us as dads. There's a lot going on, whether it's in work life or whether it's just in our hobbies or things that we enjoy, or whether it's in a moment where we've had a long day and there's something we've been looking forward to watching on TV or online. Man, we do not want to miss the little moments, the moments that might pass and never be noticed. But if we capture it, it creates a moment that lasts for a long time. Because our children, let's face it, at the end of the day, our children don't primarily need our perfection or even the provisions provided through the work that we do. What they need is our presence. And so if we can, like Jesus, be present to the moments, even the mundane, regular, everyday moments, right? Like most of our life is made up of those kind of moments. But if we can be aware that in that moment there's an opportunity, it makes a huge difference. Because the question our kids are really asking is my dad successful? Or is my dad able to accomplish a lot? Or is my dad smart, right? It's actually much more personal than that. The question they're really asking is, am I important to my dad? And that's the question that we want to answer right. Sadie may have missed it if I just continued on and watched my basketball game. Like, it would have not really hurt the relationship, but it would have missed a huge opportunity to help our relationship and for me to communicate in that moment to my daughter that she's more important than a basketball game. By the way, the basketball game was terrible. It was an awful game. So I actually didn't really miss much when I went back later and fast forwarded through it. But that's the question, guys. Your kids are wanting to know, am I important to my dad? Am I more important than his job? Am I more important than his hobbies? Am I more important than his friends? Am I more important than the things that he wants to do in his downtime? And I hope that our answer is always going to be yes, not through our speeches, but through our attention in the everyday moments that we have the presence, the eye contact, the interest, the curiosity, the time to let those conversations breathe. When we put the phone down, we ask a follow-up conversation or question, and we enter into their world, and we show up in a really important way that says to our kids, without even having to say it, you matter to me. When I think back as on my own childhood, some of the most meaningful moments weren't the big grand events or vacations. They were just ordinary moments. They were conversations in the car. They were seeing my dad in the stands at a basketball game. They were a phone call, I remember, that was a really important phone call that my dad had with me. Maybe at some point I'll share that. It was my senior year of high school. Really great moment. We don't have time for it today, but I'll come back to it. It is laughing while we're playing a game together and just simply sharing life. And these kind of moments may seem almost insignificant at the time. But over the years, as you have more and more of those moments of engagement, they become the threads that weave a strong relationship together. One of the themes I introduced last week in our podcast is that I've come to believe more and more that the best dads in life don't go big, they go small. There's a few big moments, a few big opportunities, and we need to make the most of those. But most of our opportunities in parenting are the little everyday small moments that come and go and that we often miss or don't pay attention to. And if we pay attention to them, it strengthens who we are. Most fatherhood is not a championship game. It's a Tuesday night over dinner or helping with homework or, as I said before, driving somewhere, always driving somewhere, especially if your kids are in sports. Goodness gracious, man, AAU and competition cheer and all the time in the car, the opportunity that we have to engage is enormous. If we take advantage of it, if we take our headphones out or we turn the radio off or we just get out of our own head and think about how do I create a conversation in this car, because being available when we're together is probably the greatest impact we can have as dads when we show up in those ordinary moments. And so I got a challenge for you this week. You don't have to try to become a completely different dad. You don't have to add 10 new habits to your checklist. You don't have to create some impossible standard. Instead, just ask one question. Is there one moment I can be fully present in this week? Are there a few moments in my everyday life that I can be fully present in this week? And pay attention to it. Might be a breakfast, might be a bedtime, might be going for a walk, or it might be asking a question on another one of your drives. Just one moment. And during that moment, turn the radio off, put the phone away, stop multitasking, look your kids in the eye, give them attention, ask a question, and listen. Be curious, be present, because years from now, your kids probably won't remember most of the things, big things that you did, maybe a vacation here and there, but they're probably going to remember how you made them feel moment to moment by giving them your attention as a dad. So dad, if you're carrying a pressure today, I want to remind you, your kids don't need a perfect dad. They need a present dad. I've said that so many times on this podcast. We don't have to be perfect, but man, we need to be present. We don't have to get everything right, but our kids need to know that they matter enough to us to give them our attention, to love them, and to be present with them. And every ordinary moment gives us another opportunity to communicate exactly that. You matter to me as your dad. So guys, keep showing up, keep growing up, keep taking the next small step. And I promise, if you will, you'll make a huge difference as a dad. Now, I said this early in the podcast. Before you go, I want to invite you into something powerful. I love sharing with you on this podcast, but listening to this podcast, we all know isn't enough. We need a community of other dads that we get time with consistently. So if you don't have a group of dads that you hang out with, or you have a group of dads that you're friends with, but you don't get to have more meaningful conversation, it's usually around kids' sports or couples hanging out. But if you say, you know what, there's a group of dads I would love to talk more honestly with about life and marriage and parenting and maybe faith. I came up with this little idea called Dads Distilled. And I launched a Dads Distilled community group in January. I do it once a month with a group of guys. I wrap it around a little bourbon experience I do. We do one bourbon a month and I tell the story of it. And we have a little bit, right? We don't overdo it. We enjoy a little bit of bourbon and we have some meaningful conversation. And actually, on top of that, I launched one, and now we have 9 more. So we have 10 Dads Distilled small groups in 4 different states, talking to a lot of other dads. But a Dads Distilled community group is just a handful of dads that gather at least once a month. If you want to, you can do it more. Once a month fits our rhythm, for more meaningful conversations. And so here's the offer. To help get you started, I'm currently giving away a free Dads Distilled starter pack to any dad that would be interested. And what does that include? It's a deck of conversation cards. So we created this great little conversation card deck, 52 cards, 13 topics, 3 questions each. You shuffle them, pull one, and 3 questions usually gives us over an hour of conversation in the groups I'm a part of. But I get you that deck of cards. I give you a launch guide and give you an experience guide. So if you want to see how you could lead through a bourbon experience, or you could easily translate it to, I don't know, if you like barbecue, or if you like a beer, or if you like coffee, you can easily transition it to anything that's kind of an interesting experience. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to be willing to invite a few dads that are friends of yours in to have a conversation and a great experience. If you'd be interested in knowing more about that, maybe getting that free starter pack from me, email me, please. It's scott@dadsontap.com. Scott@dadsontap.com. Just say, hey, I want the free starter pack, and I will follow up with you and we'll help you get something started. Because guys, we're better when we're not alone. We aren't built to do life alone. And so if we have a fun way and an easy way to get a group started, I hope you'll take advantage of that. And I'd love to have the opportunity to help you get something started in your community. Well, once again, thank you for joining me for the Dads on Tap podcast. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing up, and keep crafting a better dad and a better future in your home.